Astronomers tracking 3I Atlas say it has altered its course, worrying scientists about its close proximity to Earth.
At first, it looked like just another strange visitor from the stars, but within weeks, scientists realized 3I Atlas wasn't simply unusual, it was rewriting the laws of nature themselves. Data streams glitched, orbital paths broke predictions, and equations trusted since Einstein collapsed under the weight of new evidence. Was it a comet, a probe, or something even more dangerous? One fact is certain: 3I Atlas has done the unthinkable. It has shattered physics. The first signs something was wrong. It began like so many other astronomical discoveries, a faint point of light drifting across the night sky, logged almost casually by the ATLAS survey in Hawaii. At first glance, it was just another dot, another visitor. Astronomers have catalogued thousands of these faint intruders, chunks of rock or ice wandering from the frozen edges of the solar system. But within days, they realized this wasn't one of those. The numbers were all wrong. The orbit didn't match anything native. The speed didn't fit the model. This object wasn't from here. It was coming from deep space. They called it 3I Atlas, the third confirmed interstellar visitor humanity had ever seen. The first, Oumuamua in 2017, sparked heated debates with its strange acceleration and cigar-like shape. The second, Borisov in 2019, behaved more like a classic comet. But 3I Atlas was different, bigger, stranger, more dangerous. And as the data piled up, it became clear that this was not just a curiosity, it was a threat to everything we thought we knew about the universe. The initial speed measurements stunned even seasoned astronomers. 3I Atlas was tearing into the solar system at 130,000 miles per hour, faster than nearly any comet ever recorded. Its eccentricity, a measure of just how unbound it was to the sun, shattered records. In essence, this object wasn't captured. It wasn't visiting politely like a passing comet. It was slicing through our planetary neighborhood like a knife through silk on a path that didn't care what lay in its way. But the real alarm didn't come from speed alone. It came from trajectory. Most interstellar objects enter the solar system at odd, random angle, cutting above or below the ecliptic plane where the planets orbit. Not Atlas. Instead, it threaded the needle almost perfectly, gliding just 5 degrees off Earth's orbital path. Statistically, the odds of such alignment are vanishingly small, 2 in 1,000, according to orbital modelers. Yet here it was, cruising along a route that made Earth, Mars, and Venus unavoidable spectators to its passing. Inside NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, whispers spread. Why this path? Why now? Could it really be coincidence? Some shrugged and said yes, rare things happen. Others leaned closer to their screens, uneasy. They had seen this kind of alignment before, not in astronomy, but in flight plans. And then came the strangest clue of all, the plume. Comets are supposed to grow tails as sunlight vaporizes their ices, streaming dust away from the sun. But Atlas didn't play by those rules. Its tail didn't stream away. It pointed toward the sun, as though resisting the very radiation that should have shaped it. Observatories from Chile to Arizona confirmed the bizarre plume, and whispers turned into alarm bell. What could possibly drive matter against the solar wind? Some called it outgassing gone wrong. Others called it something else, propulsion. The press releases softened the edges, calling it unusual or enigmatic. But behind closed doors, the Navy was already briefed. This wasn't just an interstellar rock anymore. It was behaving like a craft. And what the military saw next made them move faster than anyone expected. James Webb's impossible discovery. When the James Webb Space Telescope turned its golden mirrors toward 3I Atlas, scientists expected confirmation of what ground-based observatories had already seen: a strange, CO2-heavy comet, bizarre in some ways, but still manageable within the laws of physics. Instead, Webb captured something that broke those laws wide open. On August 6, 2025, Webb's Near-Infrared Spectrograph (NIR spec) locked onto the object during a classified observation session. What came back was not the dusty profile of a comet, but a signature so alien it left veteran astronomers speechless. Instead of water vapor, instead of carbon monoxide, Webb's instruments picked up a pulsing infrared signal, structured, repeating, precise. To some, it looked less like chemistry and more like communication. The shock deepened when Webb's imaging system captured the plume itself. Unlike natural comet tails, which stretch chaotically behind their parent body, Atlas's plume appeared symmetrical, stable, engineered. Data revealed that the particles weren't dispersing in random clouds, but forming tight, columned streams, as if being expelled under pressure. Even stranger, the plume aligned perfectly with the subtle course corrections astronomers had been measuring for weeks. It wasn't just an outgassing effect, it looked like a thruster. But then came the discovery that shook the entire mission team. Embedded within the plume's spectral data were faint but undeniable patterns, mathematical sequences resembling prime numbers. For decades, SETI researchers have argued that prime numbers would be the universal language of intelligence, a way to say, "We are here." Now, Webb had caught those very patterns coming from an object hurtling through our solar system. Inside NASA, panic quietly bloomed. Webb was built to peer into the origins of the universe, not to confirm or deny extraterrestrial technology. Yet here it was, staring straight at an interstellar visitor, behaving less like a rock and more like a machine. Leaked internal memos revealed just how dire the situation seemed. One analyst described the data as telecommunications grade. Another wrote, "If this is natural, then physics itself is wrong. If it's not natural, we're not alone." And yet, the official public update that followed downplayed everything, calling Atlas chemically unusual, but not unprecedented. It was the kind of language meant to quiet headlines, not to reflect the storm raging inside mission control. Word of the discovery still slipped out. Within days, whispers of prime number pulses spread across astronomy forums. Conspiracy podcasts latched on, spinning theories that Webb had uncovered not just a visitor, but a probe deliberately designed to signal Earth. On Twitter, Elon Musk joked darkly, "If 3i Atlas has thrusters, I just hope it's not looking for parking." The tweet went viral, but beneath the humor was unease. If Webb's findings were true, humanity might be facing its first undeniable encounter with something beyond Earth. And yet, just as shocking as Webb's discovery was, it wasn't the last anomaly, because while NASA debated whether to call this natural or engineered, the object itself shifted again, leaving behind clues so bizarre that scientists began to whisper about a cover-up in the making. The Navy's secret signal. While NASA debated what to reveal, the US Navy was already mobilizing. Hidden deep under the world's oceans lies a network of hydroacoustic sensors originally built to track Soviet submarines during the Cold War. These sensors are so sensitive they can detect the rumble of volcanic eruptions on the ocean floor or the faintest hum of something unusual in space. And in mid-August, they picked up exactly that. Every 11.2 seconds, a low-frequency pulse rippled through the array. At first, engineers thought it was just oceanic interference. But when they cross-checked with NASA's restricted Webb data, jaws dropped. The same 11.2-second pulse was echoing in both places, the vacuum of space and the depths of Earth's oceans. What did it mean? Officially, the Navy offered no explanation. Off the record, one analyst admitted the pulses felt deliberate. They weren't random static. They weren't natural seismic echoes. They carried structure, like code. To some, it suggested that Atlas wasn't simply passing by. It was interfacing, sending out signals that resonated both above and below. When word of the Navy's findings leaked, speculation exploded. Conspiracy forums insisted Atlas was broadcasting to something already on Earth. Others believed the Navy's silence proved they were attempting to decode a message. Meanwhile, mainstream outlets cautiously reported anomalous data without naming sources. But behind closed doors, panic grew. The Navy elevated its emergency readiness. Submarines were quietly redeployed. Carrier groups adjusted positions in the Atlantic and Pacific. A Pentagon briefing document later exposed classified Atlas under a chilling new label, technological unknown of potential extraterrestrial origin. That's not the language of science. That's the language of war. And yet no official announcement was made. Instead, the story was buried beneath layers of denial and distraction. But the truth had already slipped out. Atlas was no ordinary visitor. It was a presence. And when politicians got wind of the Navy's hidden signals, the story was no longer confined to scientists and soldiers. It was about to explode onto the world stage. Navigation that shouldn't exist. The most alarming discovery about 3I Atlas emerged when astronomers realized it was actively and deliberately changing its trajectory in ways that couldn't be explained by any known natural forces. The object was making subtle but unmistakable course corrections as it moved through our solar system, adjusting its path with mathematical precision that strongly indicated some kind of navigation system rather than just drifting under the influence of gravity like all natural objects do. Natural objects in space follow completely predictable paths that are determined entirely by gravitational forces and the speed they had when entering a gravitational field. Once you know an asteroid's exact position, velocity, and direction, plus all the gravitational influences it will encounter from our sun and planets, you can calculate its future path with incredible precision many years in advance. The laws of orbital mechanics are among the most thoroughly tested principles in physics, confirmed by thousands of successful spacecraft missions over many decades. But 3I Atlas was deviating from these precisely calculated paths in ways that required some form of propulsion system to be actively operating on the object. The trajectory changes were small enough that they almost went completely unnoticed during initial observations, but they were happening consistently and at exactly the right times to maintain a very specific course toward the inner regions of our solar system where Earth orbits our Sun. These weren't random deviations that might be caused by natural phenomena like gas emissions when ice heats up or gravitational disturbances from distant objects. The course corrections were far too precise and purposeful to be explained by chance or natural forces. Traditional comets can slightly change their paths when ice on their surfaces turns to gas from solar heating, creating small jets that push the object in different directions through basic rocket action. But 3I Atlas showed absolutely no signs of this kind of outgassing that would be easily visible to telescopes. There was no detectable tail, no particle emissions, and no vapor plumes that could possibly account for the observed trajectory changes. Additional observations from the Soho Solar Observatory detected highly unusual electromagnetic signatures when 3I Atlas passed through streams of charged particles flowing from our Sun. The terrifying pattern. As researchers continued collecting data about 3I Atlas and comparing it with information from the previous interstellar objects that had visited our solar system, a deeply troubling pattern began to emerge that challenged everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. The timing, characteristics, and behavior of these three mysterious visitors were starting to look much less like random cosmic coincidences and much more like carefully coordinated parts of some kind of planned sequence. The first confirmed interstellar visitor, the now famous Oumuamua, had arrived in our solar system back in 2017 with its own collection of deeply puzzling characteristics that baffled scientists and sparked intense debates throughout the global astronomy community. It had an extremely elongated shape, completely unlike any known asteroid, displayed unexpected acceleration that couldn't be explained by normal comet behavior, and showed light reflection properties that didn't match any typical space rocks. At the time, most mainstream scientists dismissed these oddities as interesting but ultimately explainable quirks of an unusual but still fundamentally natural object from another star system. Then came 2I Borisov in 2019, which initially seemed much more conventional and familiar because it had an obvious tail and gas emission like a regular comet, but extremely detailed analysis revealed that it was moving much faster and behaving far more chaotically than any comet that had ever been observed by human astronomers. Its composition was also highly unusual, containing materials that strongly suggested it had formed in a stellar environment completely different from our own solar system. Now, 3I Atlas was displaying characteristics that seemed to combine and dramatically amplify the most puzzling features of both previous visitors. It had the mysterious brightness variations and trajectory oddities that had made Oumuamua so controversial among scientists, combined with the extreme velocity and unusual chemical makeup that made 2I Borisov so scientifically interesting. But it also showed clear evidence of internal structure, electromagnetic activity, and controlled navigation capabilities that neither of the previous objects had displayed to anywhere near such a pronounced degree. The mathematical probability of 3 such highly unusual objects arriving in our solar system during such a short time period was essentially 0 if they were truly independent random events with no connection to each other. Recent observations had also identified other potentially unusual objects, including a comet designated C 2025 R2 Swan, which had been discovered by amateur astronomers using the Swan network of small telescopes distributed around the globe, when information disappeared. As the full implications of the 3I Atlas discoveries began to sink in among government officials and research administrators around the world, something completely unprecedented started happening in the normally open world of astronomical research. Agencies and institutions that had initially been excited to share their observational data with the global scientific community suddenly became extremely cautious about releasing any information to the public or even to other scientists working on the same mysterious object. NASA's regular press releases about 3I Atlas, which had initially provided detailed updates about trajectory calculations, chemical analysis results, and planned observational activities, became increasingly vague and much less frequent than the scientific community had come to expect from such a significant discovery. The European Space Agency completely stopped publishing the raw telescope data that independent researchers around the world had been using to conduct their own analysis and verification of the official findings coming from major institutions. The normally transparent and highly competitive process of modern scientific research was being disrupted by invisible bureaucratic barriers and restrictions that seemed to appear overnight across multiple countries and research institutions simultaneously. Proposals for additional telescope observation time were being delayed or outright denied without clear explanations. Major scientific conferences that had initially scheduled special sessions devoted specifically to discussing interstellar objects were quietly canceling those presentations or moving them to closed sessions with severely restricted attendance. Journalists and science writers who had been closely following the story found themselves facing completely unprecedented bureaucratic obstacles and stonewalling tactics that simply hadn't existed during previous coverage of major astronomical discoveries. Freedom of Information Act requests that should have routinely produced standard observational data and research findings were being significantly delayed for months, heavily censored with large sections blacked out when finally released, or rejected entirely under vague claims of ongoing internal security review. The information restrictions weren't limited to American institutions and government agencies. Major observatories in Chile, Australia, South Africa, India, and across Europe were all implementing remarkably similar communication policies and data access limitations at roughly the same time, suggesting an extraordinary level of international coordination that was highly unusual for the typically competitive world of scientific research. What we're really looking at. The overwhelming weight of scientific evidence about 3I Atlas was pointing toward conclusions that mainstream institutional science was not prepared to discuss publicly, but that were becoming increasingly impossible to ignore as more sophisticated analysis continued to reveal characteristics that had absolutely no natural explanation whatsoever. Every serious attempt to account for all of the object's observed properties using known natural processes and physical laws required multiple, highly unlikely coincidences to occur simultaneously in ways that violated basic principles of statistical probability. The sophisticated thermal management capabilities observed by the James Webb Space Telescope suggested engineering principles and advanced materials science that represented technology far beyond anything in current human scientific understanding or manufacturing capability. The ability to maintain distinctly different thermal zones across various sections of an object's surface while traveling through the constantly changing radiation environment of deep space requires incredibly sophisticated internal systems and specially designed materials that can actively control heat absorption and distribution. The non-gravitational acceleration and precise trajectory corrections clearly indicated some form of advanced propulsion or guidance system that was operating without producing any detectable exhaust signatures, energy emissions, or particle streams that our most sensitive scientific instruments could identify. This suggested propulsion technology based on physical principles that were completely different from anything in current human scientific knowledge, possibly involving direct manipulation of gravitational fields or other exotic physics that human scientists were only beginning to explore theoretically. The complex electromagnetic activity detected coming from inside the object indicated the presence of active electronic or computational systems that were continuously processing information, making calculated decisions, and possibly even communicating with external sources or control systems located elsewhere in space. These electromagnetic patterns were far too organized, consistent, and purposeful to be explained by natural phenomena like random static electrical discharges or chance interactions with cosmic radiation. If 3I Atlas truly represented artificial technology rather than a natural space object, it demonstrated engineering capabilities and scientific knowledge from a civilization that was potentially thousands or even millions of years more technologically advanced than current human civilization. The object had successfully survived an interstellar journey lasting tens of thousands of years while maintaining complete structural integrity and fully functional internal systems throughout the entire voyage. Thanks for watching another episode. While you are still here, make sure to click the video on your screen for more quality content.